What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Well, there's good news and bad news. The bad news is I got a big mouth and I can't help it, and I got to state my opinion. The good news is I got another video. So it looks like the Canelo March 8th comeback fight after one-sided, lopsided loss to Floyd Mayweather is getting more and more dismal, in my opinion. Initially, they were talking about making a Canelo and Miguel Cotto fight. I'm on board with that. That's interesting. Puerto Rico versus Mexico has had a long-standing boxing rivalry, so that could produce a great fight. Cotto actually looks spectacular with Freddie Roach. I'm not saying it's because of Freddie Roach, but that's who the motherfucker was with in his last fight against Delvin Rodriguez. Now, I know Delvin Rodriguez is no elite fighter. He's more of a kind of like a journeyman, gatekeeper, somebody with losses. I definitely think Canelo is better than Delvin Rodriguez. Delvin Rodriguez did a lot of things wrong in that fight. Didn't use his height, among other things. But looks like Miguel Cotto most likely won't be ready for March. So the Canelo fight, if it does happen, would happen in the future. And like I said before, it looks like Canelo needs a dance partner, and Cotto most likely will be fighting Sergio Martinez, I think, in June. Because Cotto, it sounds like he's trying to double dip. He knows he can move up to 160, which is beyond the weight class he's fought at. And even if he loses to Sergio Martinez, as long as he doesn't get like battered to the point where he's like permanently hurt, like Antonio Margarito versus Pacquiao, where Pacquiao fucked his eye up beyond recognition. As long as nothing like that happens, God forbid, Cotto could still fight Canelo and it makes sense. But if Cotto fought Canelo and lost, then who would want to see him move up to a uncharted weight class to fight Sergio Martinez at a higher weight at 160? It just really wouldn't make sense. But this way, Cotto can kind of double dip and get both paydays. And I mean, if he wins and beats Sergio Martinez at 160, he's really the man. And then he can come back down and fight Canelo. But it looks like the handling of Canelo in his next fight is turning out to be kind of lackluster, in my opinion. I heard a bunch of names. There's a bunch of people at 154 that could make for an interesting fight. For whatever reason, even though Canelo's big as fuck, it doesn't seem like they want him to move out of the 154-pound division for whatever reason. So I guess if he can still make 154 the day of the weigh-in, they're just going to milk it as long as they can. The problem is, it looks like they're pushing for a Carlos Molina fight. It's like Golden Boy, Canelo's handlers. They can't give Canelo like no type of like leeway where he doesn't have a belt. It's like they want to hand him a belt. He just lost his last fight and is already being thrown in a title picture against Carlos Molina possibly. Not to mention, aside from the fact that he got knocked off the ladder, or should have been knocked off the ladder by a smaller fighter, Floyd Mayweather, who arguably is the pound for pound #1 guy. So it's not a horrible loss, but it's a loss. It's a loss. A loss is a loss is a loss. So a guy that lost his last fight and had a close fight, closer than the Texas judges had against Austin Trout, he's not really even knocked off the ladder if his very next comeback fight is already being put in a title picture. So that's kind of unfair. Other fighters who've had to take L's and rebuild, they have fan bases to some degree, maybe not as big as Canelo, but that's the whole point of taking a loss. You see Lamont Peterson, who he's fighting in the next fight. He fought Lucas Matisse, got ran through, and look who he's fighting, trying to get and he actually has a belt still, I believe, because the Lucas Matisse fight wasn't even at the belts weren't at stake. So point being is, me personally, I don't really want to see Carlos Molina. Out of all the people at 154, that is probably the fight that I least want to see. I'd rather see Canelo and Kirkland. I think that's a hell of a fight, and there's no title involved, but there's fans' enjoyment that is involved. I think Canelo's more precise, of like he's a boxer puncher, shows some different looks. Then you have Kirkland, who's a fucking bulldozer. In his last fight, he was relentless. definitely a attack artist, and he's going to try to overwhelm Canelo. So I want to see how Canelo does with that type of adversity. We seen how Broner reacted against Maidana when he was like bull rushed. He didn't know how to react. So I'm curious how Canelo would act with the constant pressure. Pressure bust pipes. A fight with Angulo. Angulo's slow as fuck, but he was able to look good in his last fight and give problems to Edeslani Lara, who is a slicker fighter, who's a Cuban fighter, who's slick. And it's not like Edeslani Lara's past his prime. He just mopped the floor with Austin Trout, who gave Canelo a tougher fight than he gave Edeslani Lara. So Angulo might be able to do something with Virgil Hunter to the point where it becomes interesting. As far as boxing, I think Canelo's superior to him as a boxer, but Angulo still has that equalizer. Looks like he has a chin and he has power. So again, I would anxiously await to see how Canelo responded to someone who perhaps has more power than him if they landed a big shot. Plus, Angulo rips to the body just like Canelo does. So it could be interesting. Plus, they're two Mexican fighters. I think it would do big numbers. Edeslani Lara. I mean, this dude has been seeking Canelo for the last couple of years, called him out numerous times. He's had to fight tons of people, from Journeyman to Vanes Matarosen to Austin Trout to Angulo, and he still hasn't got his shot, his crack at Canelo. So that's pretty unfair. I would like to see Edeslani Lara after his performance against Austin Trout. He called Canelo out. He said, I did what you couldn't do against Austin Trout, basically, or I did it in a better fashion. So Edeslani Lara, you got to throw him in the mix. Nonetheless, I would rather see all of those fights I just named over a fight with Carlos Molina. Carlos Molina looked pretty shitty in his last fight against Ishe Smith. That was perhaps the most boring fight on the Mayweather-Canelo undercard. I enjoyed everything else but that fight, literally. And I like all styles. I like the boxer puncher. I like brawlers. I like boxing as a whole. And that fight was fucking boring. And this is the fight that they're trying to push for. Virgil Hunter wants his fighter to have a shot at Canelo, and he disagrees with Canelo's handlers, thinking that the Angulo fight doesn't make sense because Angulo's coming off a loss. Guess what? So is Canelo. And again, I understand he's a superstar. And see, this is the other thing that trips me out. Canelo's supposed to be fighting 3 times in 2014. And one of them, hopefully, is against Cotto. So that's cool. So that leaves 2 other slots. You could do like Angulo, Kirkland, or Edeslani Lara. Interchange those any way you like. And I think that's a great year. If he can pull off some of those victories or all those victories, that's a great year for Canelo. The other thing that is questionable is they say he wants to fight 3 times in 2014, and they even have the dates outlined. I reported about this. This is not a good pay-per-view fight. They're talking about making all 3 of these dates pay-per-view. To me, Carlos Molina versus Canelo is not pay-per-view worthy. You guys talk about Rigondeaux being boring and this and that. I just don't see me dishing out pay-per-view dollars to see Carlos Molina and Canelo. I'll stream the shit out of that. It's not hating on Canelo, not hating on Carlos Molina. It's just not a fight I'd rather see. I'd rather see James Kirkland settle the score with Carlos Molina than Canelo. So that's just my personal opinion. I'm just not really a fan of Canelo immediately getting a title shot, and then it just so happens he's getting a title shot against a very awkward, very tricky, very slippery fighter who himself didn't even look great in his last fight. And I just think it's going to be a lackluster fight if Canelo does fight Carlos Molina. It's very, very, I repeat, very hard to look good against fighters like Carlos Molina. Carlos Molina, Carlos Quintana, certain fighters, what's his name? Miguel Vasquez. Certain fighters is very hard to look great against. So don't expect any like knockouts or anything crazy. And to me, out of all the fights that Canelo could possibly come back to, his first fight back in March, that's not really pay-per-view worthy. So they would have to stack the fuck out of the undercard and make some tremendous fights like a Golden Boy top rank, Brandon Rios versus Adrian Broner or some shit that fans really wanted to see, and really load the undercard with some amazing fights, because to me, I'm not paying top dollar pay-per-view prices for Canelo versus what's his name? Carlos Molina. I pay pay-per-view for Canelo versus Edeslani Lara, Canelo versus James Kirkland, even Canelo versus Angulo. I would pay pay-per-view rates for that, but not for Carlos Molina. I just don't think it'll be an exciting enough fight. And let me know what you guys think. That's just my opinion. No disrespect to Canelo. I just don't like the way his handlers are approaching that. I think an Angulo fight is far more impressive. If you're not going to give Edeslani Lara a try or a shot, maybe because you came off a loss, Edeslani Lara is a tricky style, so you don't want to go against a crafty southpaw. So be it. That's fine. Miguel Cotto's looking on to 160. Cool. At least make a Kirkland or Angulo fight. Fuck. So hopefully he releases his decision this week so we can see who he's deciding. And let me know if you're a fan of that. Any diehard Canelo fans, diehard Carlos Molina fan, just really leave a comment and let me know why you think this fight would be good if you do, or if you're not on board with it. So leave that comment. Let me know what you guys think. As always, hate, comment, or subscribe. Till next video, it's Ego signing off.